This is Artful Discourse, your weekly escape into the vibrant world of creativity, culture, and intellectual exploration. I'm your host, Benjamin Kirk, and I invite you to join me on a journey through the rich tapestry of human thought and the beating heart of artistic expression at Fresno State's College of Arts and Humanities. Welcome. I have three guests today covering two topics. Professor Thomas Witt Ellis from the Department of Theater and Dance, who was on one of our first shows, is with us today. And he is joined by Dr. Paula San Martin, Professor of Spanish in the Department of Modern and Classical Languages and Literatures. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you. Welcome.
And they are here to talk about their production, Death and the Maiden, by Ariel Dorfman. But first, I'm excited to introduce Hannah Oya, one of our newest professors in the Department of Media, Communications, and Journalism, or MCJ. She is here to talk about her experience as co-producer on the Netflix docuseries Turning Point, Season 2, The Bomb in the Cold War, which is available to binge watch right now on Netflix. Oya, welcome. It's so great to finally meet you in person.
Thank you for having me, Ben.
All right. Now, I finished watching Turning Point, the series, a couple weeks ago, and it was just truly outstanding. And you were co-producer on it. What does that mean? Can you briefly describe your role, your duties as co-producer on the project?
For sure. So I have actually started this project as a field producer, which was back in the summer of 2022. It was a year before I joined as assistant professor at Fresno State.
Mm-hmm.
So my role as a field producer was to, secure interview with the the people who experienced the battle, the Second World War, the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and, securing an interview with experts and doing interviews, and also the, collecting the footage and the photos, and, responsible for the field production. And then later I became a producer and co-producer of the whole series. So I had to oversee the editing process and the post-production. And currently we are busy, speaking with the reporters around the world, pitching the story to them so that we can get attention to the series.
Now, history professor Dr. Lori Clune in the College of Social Sciences was featured as an expert in the second episode of the series. Can you tell us a little bit about how that came about?
Oh, sure. So it's really funny that so when I joined this project back in 2022, of course I wasn't working at the Fresno State yet. I wasn't hired back then, but as a producer, we were going through the list of the interviewees, potential interviewees, and we discussed who's gonna be interviewed and who's to be eliminated. And I saw her name, Lori Clune from Fresno State, and we said, "Oh, she's a very strong candidate. Let's go with that." But never know that I will be her future colleague. And then, during the post-production process, when I saw the first draft from the director, we were discussing, again, who's going to be in the show. And then I saw her name that she's a candidate. So oh yeah, we should definitely have her in the series. So it ended up with a, collaboration between the two colleges. And, Fresno State is the only university in the world that has two professors, experts working on this project.
Wow.
So it's pretty prestigious.
And that's an amazing take on it, because I didn't know that. I actually thought it would have been the other way around. You came here, you met Lori, and you jived and everything. So that's kind of an amazing, kind of serendipitous moment there.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Now, do you have a favorite memory from working on the project?
Yeah. So every moment of the process was really precious. But I guess my favorite part was doing the filming in Hiroshima,
Mm-hmm.
and meeting with the survivors of the atomic bombing. So their testimonies was really touching, and those are the one who really went through the atrocity of the battle. So, they were reaching to the age of 90 years old, 100 years old, to the age that it's almost impossible to hear firsthand testimonies. So, being there as a journalist and a producer, making sure that, we can put their voices to be heard to the global audience. And I feel like, yeah, this is it. This is what this is what my life is, So
Mm-hmm.
that's really the moment I realized the importance of my work.
It really was touching to watch that section of it. And that was episode 1 and 2, right?
Yeah, 1, 2, and 3. Actually, 3, we included the survivors of the Lucky Dragon boat incident
Mhm,
that happened actually 70 years ago in March. The Japanese fisherman was exposed to radiation
mhm,
because of the U.S. experiment in the Marshall Islands.
mhm.
And also, we included a part at the very end of the series, which was episode 9. So we ended up the series with the voices of Hiroshima survivors.
Mm. Ik Is there anything else you wanna say about that? Just that talking to those survivors was just an amazing, and hearing those experiences, the pain they felt, the destruction that was just instant, just a snap of a fingers, and their whole world was annihilated.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, during this production process, I realized that how difficult for them to talk about their experiences for such a long time. Not only because it's a traumatic experience, but also because of the cultural, historical discrimination against the Hibakusha people. Hibakusha means the people who are exposed to radiation.
Mhm,
So Hibakusha people have been going through a lot of discrimination in Japan. They couldn't talk about that they have experienced Hiroshima atomic bombing because they're afraid of, not getting married or like not getting a job, getting divorced or, not being able to have kids, things
mhm.
like that,
Wow.
because they really didn't have any like medical, you know, support back then. Then, hearing the story was really like heartbreaking for me, how much pain they have gone through after the war as well.
Mm.
And I we asked them like, okay, so this series will be delivered to 230 million subscribers around the world. What would you like to tell them to the people around the world? And every single of them said that please tell people around the world that we should never use atomic bombing to anybody. Atomic bombing is the worst thing the human could do.
Yeah, as someone who grew up during the Cold War, the series kind of brought back a lot of memories for me, and I was especially struck by how powerful the atomic bombs are and how truly frightening the next generations of leaders were, that they could be used again, which is really why there was a Cold War. Now, do you think young people and teens and young adults have that same understanding of the power and the global dangers these weapons are capable of?
Yeah, I think that's actually the main reason like we decided to do this project. So the turning point means that the historical moments that you cannot turn back or take it back, right?
Right.
But if you wanted to learn about where we are today or where we're going to, especially in this difficult world, where there's all this conflicts and a war happening around the world, we really have to understand the importance of history. But without learning the history, we really don't understand where we're standing. And especially after I came to this country 5 years ago, I realized that, American college students in general, I'm not talking about Fresno student only, but
Mhm.
American college student in general uh, don't really understand the history as much as they should, especially about the international history and how much the US government have influenced overseas
Right.
and what the consequences. So I think that this series, we wanted to bring the series out to especially to younger generation to help them understand the importance of the history and learning what's happening today from the historical point of view.
And what have you found the feedback from your students? What has their feedback been from it?
Yeah, they're really excited. They said that
Mhm.
not every school have professors working on the Netflix episode, so that was really cool. I was telling them that I'm working on a documentary about the Cold War, but I wasn't allowed to talk about the full disclosure until there was a green light in February. So when the production said, "Okay, we can release the information," I told my students, "Well, actually, it was a Netflix," and they were like, "No way!" And I showed the trailer to the class, and they said, "Oh my goodness! Wow, that's so cool!" So they were so excited, and we had a couple of screening on campus, and they came in and then to see the film. So I guess like I think they were really excited. They were so impressed, which I really appreciate, like
Were there aspects of your experience that you were able to share with them and pass on to them?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, I think the students really took the message from the series. You know
Mhm.
how dangerous the nuclear power is, especially for the younger generations don't really understand that the historical consequences from the Cold War. Because they were not born. I wasn't born back then either.
Yeah.
So like for me, I was trying to figure out what was it like. Trying to put myself in their shoes and try to see the things from their shoe, but it was, challenging even for me, but for my students, it was even more challenging. But I guess my students understand the importance of the history, and as a journalist, especially because they want to be a journalist in the future, they understand the importance of the telling the story based on the facts. You know.
Yeah.
hmm
Yeah. So, in just a couple weeks, you're going to be in Santiago, Chile, and you're
Yes.
going to be speaking at the UNESCO World Press Freedom Day. So, what's your talk on?
Yeah. So I'm very excited about this project. So we are going to talk about the urging press freedom issue in newsrooms in Africa and Asia.
Hmm.
So it's a panel discussion between me and my fellow colleague back in Syracuse, where I used to work as assistant professor. So we will be giving a presentation about the case studies, and I'll be particularly talking about the what's actually going on in Japan right now. So based on the Reporters Beyond Borders, the non-profit organization in Paris, who report this freedom of status of free press every year.
Hmm.
Japan ranked 68th in the world, which is
Oh,
surprising,
right.
and the lowest in the G7 country. So, being such an advanced country, developed country, why Japan ranks so low? So the problem is that there has been a huge censorship issue, the self censorship issue. People are really scared of being critical about the authorities.
Right.
So I'm going to be talking about these case studies, but the most important thing is that we will be taking my students, Fresno students, to the
Yeah.
conference.
Yeah,
So
that's exciting. So, the students get to go. What do you anticipate they're going to experience at the conference?
yeah, so they will be giving a presentation also.
Hmm.
I will give them 15 minutes to show their video report. That's actually the final project in my global campus studio class in the MCJ department. So they will be making this 10 minutes video report with interviewing with journalists around the world, talking about the status of journalism, status of free press in their countries, and we'll be presenting that. And the students will propose the innovative solution to to help the journalist from the dangerous situations.
All right. Now, are there any future projects we should be looking out for?
Well, I guess this UNESCO conference was really, one of the highlight for my first year at the Fresno State,
Absolutely.
because
Yeah.
as you know, the U.S. government was absent from the UN UNESCO for the last 5 years,
Mm.
and this conference will be the very first conference after the U.S. rejoined UNESCO. So Fresno State will be one of the first university to take a lead in this global initiative.
Can you give us a little background on why we were not part of UNESCO for that
Oh
period?
yeah, so during the Trump administration, the Trump said that Trump President Trump back then said that the UN you know was not supporting the U.S. policy as
Mhm.
much they should, so they pulled out
Yeah.
from the UNESCO. And UNESCO is, as you know, it's a very important agency in the UN. So they preserved education on history and making culture and the arts and arts and culture, and also including dance literature. So it's a really important agency, but the US was absent because of this governmental policy for 5 years.
All right. Is there anything I missed? Anything you'd like to add?
Well, I've been very happy, very lucky to be here as assistant professor at Fresno State. My first year is going to about to be end in the next 3 weeks, and I cannot ask more. I didn't expect that I would have such an amazing students in here, and my year would be full of this learning experience and the opportunity as a faculty. So I'm very happy and I'm very lucky. And I wanted to say thank you to all the listeners who are listening to, this show today
Yeah.
for supporting me and supporting us.
Well, I'm glad you're here. And I'm over the moon with what you've accomplished your first year here. And I know you'd started it before that, but it's really just truly amazing to have somebody here that our students can learn from that have had these experiences. Worldwide production on a Netflix that you said reaches how many people?
It's reached to 230 million people. And the last
Wow.
week, there was a new report came out, and the last week, the series, The Turning Point, marked number three in the entire US among the streaming service, and so far 630 million viewers.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot.
That's a lot. That's a lot. And so
Scary.
summertime is coming up. So for everybody who's buried in your schoolwork, keep this in mind. Put this on your Netflix to watch account. You know, this is something you're going to want to binge watch. Sit down. It's truly amazing. It's interesting. It's emotional, and it really ties in all of the history to what's going on today and the dangers we're facing today, which I thought was amazing. Every episode, they sprinkle it. They kind of talk about what's happening today and how the history is relevant, and that's what's really amazing about this project. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And again, that project is Turning Points, Season 2, The Bomb in the Cold War. Next on the show, we have Professor Thomas Witt Ellis from the Department of Theater and Dance and Dr. Paula San Martin, Professor of Spanish in the Department of Modern and Classical Languages and Literatures. They are doing a reader's production of Death and the Maiden by Ariel Dorfman at 6 p.m. May 10th in Music 160. So, Thomas, I kind of wanted to start with you and just find out, what is a reader's theater production?
Very good question. A reader's theater production is where the actors sit on the stage, typically on stools with music stands, and they are literally reading from the script. Now, it's dramatic. The actors are acting, but they have not memorized their lines.
Mm-hmm.
So this is very, very typical when producers in New York on Broadway are trying out plays. They'll bring some big actors in and they'll read from the script.
Right.
And the actors do a very good job of dramatizing the script. So unlike the productions that I typically do, which are what we call up on their feet, this one, the actors are seated. And now they do get up on their feet and they do move around a little bit, but that's just to spice it up and to make the audience kind of excited. But they're 90% of the play, they're seated.
And Paula, you're going to be featured in this.
Yes.
So talk about a little bit about your experience so far and what you're expecting out of it.
So, well, there's two connections with Thomas that kind of brought this about. First, my area of specialization is Black literatures in the Americas, and I have things in common with Hannah because I studied testimony, Black women voices through literature, recovering the role in history. And so since I came to Fresno State, I supported Thomas' plays, and he also came to presentations that I had of speakers that I invited. And I worked in theater in the past when I was an undergraduate and graduate student. So Thomas and I had thought about doing something together for a while. I participated in a student film project in the past. So a couple of years ago already, Thomas told me about Death and the Maiden that he had put together in Cuba in the past, and I was very excited. So then last year I was gone. I was resident director in Spain, but this year we returned to it. And yeah, we're going to do it this way. At the beginning, we thought about full production, but it's going to be this way, although we're mixing a bit, being on our feet. We have some parts. And so I'm excited about, of course, the acting part because it's kind of going back to my roots that I did theater in the past, but also about the theme of the play that has to do with testimonies, recovering women's voices in history. They're being allowed to tell their stories about things that happened and how they were written and portrayed.
Yeah.
So it has two parts that attract me to the project.
So Thomas, tell me a little bit about the play. What is it about? Why is it important?
Well, my introduction to the play was many years ago when I was asked to participate in a festival in Cuba, and I had a different play that I was taking to Cuba for production, and one of the actors got sick and had to drop out. So I was searching frantically for another play to do in Cuba, and someone mentioned this. Now, I didn't read the play. I was in such a hurry, I decided, oh, well, I'll just do it. So I didn't, by the time I read it and realized it was about a repressive regime where people were being kidnapped and tortured, and I thought, well, if I take this to Cuba, I think maybe Castro, because Castro was in
Right.
power, I
Alive.
thought maybe his lieutenants and would think, would ban the show or jail us for doing subversive stuff. And, it's difficult getting in trouble in another country.
Right.
So,
Especially Cuba at the
Yes.
Yeah,
time.
at that time, yes.
especially. So, long story short, it worked out just fine. And the Cubans felt that this wasn't about their country, but another
Mhm.
much more repressive regime. And so it worked out very well. So I kept it in my mind. I always wanted to do this play as a regular theater production.
Right.
But there's just so many, there's hundreds of plays, and I have to narrow that down to one play per year.
Right.
So this, when I was talking to Paula, it turned out to be a good project for us to do,
To collaborate, yeah.
to collaborate.
And the interesting part too is that when you did the play was in Santiago,
Yes.
which is the area where more black population, the
Mhm.
rebellions, the revolution started. So
hmm
I mean, there's so many connections
Right.
with what we both work on.
So to answer your question though, Ben, the play is about I don't want to give away too much,
Okay.
but it's about
A
a
woman?
young woman that has been kidnapped, literally, as people are in these kinds of regimes. They're kidnapped, they're tortured, they're buried, they're disappeared.
Mhm,
And she happened to have survived that. She was let go.
mhm,
And through a series of circumstances, she happens to kind of run across her torturer. I can't explain how that happened, but then it becomes a lot of discussion about, because in these cases, Nazi regimes and all that, the perpetrators or the villains always feel that they're following orders
Mhm.
or they're doing this for the greater good or some other kind of propagandized rationale to underscore human rights abuses.
Right.
mhm,
So it's really about human rights abuses, the torture of women,
mhm,
and also the fact that I'm going to drag the United States into this, how other countries can sit back and look at these kinds of things being done and not being able to lift a finger to really mitigate or abate this kind of human rights abuse.
mhm,
Yeah. So it is a very important play. It's
mhm.
a play that's being done in a different way than what. So that's exciting as well. And it's going to be in Music 160, which is kind of a mid-size seminar room.
Lecture hall, yes.
Yeah.
The theater arts department we're doing another play at
Mhm.
that time. J.
Mhm.
Daniel Herring is
Mhm.
directing a play at that time,
Mhm.
so he's kind of using up the theater. He's using one theater, but it overlaps to the other theater.
Mhm.
So we can't really get into the smaller theater at the time because he's doing another show.
Mhm.
And then the third theater that we have is just not as hospitable as Music 160. But Music 160 is not the best facility, but it's free. Our illustrious dean was able to snag that for us. We had another property in location in mind, but it didn't work out.
Mhm.
And the dean secured this for us free of charge. So we're very happy.
Mhm.
Paula, what are you most excited about with this play?
I mean, both things, acting for sure. Like it's been very exciting. I've been working with a student because there's only three characters. So a student that plays the husband and an alumni, right? That used to be a student that plays the doctor. And so the acting part, working with Thomas, all of that, bringing it to the students also because of the content, because it has to do with this forgive and forget, revising history, whether we should let the past be the past or whether it's important so that we learn from it. And that's something very important also in my classes when I do literature, because I mix literature and history. And the play also leaves a bit open, kind of like whether she is he or not, because you deal with what trauma does. So I think it's still very relevant, as you know what Hannah was talking about the testimonies. But also, yeah, I think it's a play that can interest our students and faculty. We've kind of leave it kind of secret till now because we were also trying to secure a room, do this. So now we're gonna start announcing it and see. So it's gonna be exciting that it's also been an interdepartmental collaboration. So that's also something.
Collaborations
Yes.
are always
Yes.
always have exciting outcomes.
Yes.
So, okay, so if people want to go to this play, is it free and open to the public? Is
Yes.
there tickets involved?
Free and open to the public, first come, first serve. The theater seats about 100 people, so come early, get a good seat. The show runs about maybe less than 2 hours, maybe about 90 minutes with one short intermission, and it's very thrilling. We're hoping to surprise everyone, and we've talked to the president. He should be there.
Oh, nice.
Yes, and I'm pressuring him a little bit.
No, he was excited.
He was
Not
very
you,
excited.
Thomas.
Yeah.
I can't imagine you pressuring anybody ever.
He knew the play too.
Yeah.
He
He
was,
knows the play.
familiar,
Yeah.
with the play. But
That
yeah,
makes
we
sense.
did it on purpose 6 to 8 because we wanted also audience from after work
Mhm.
that everybody's, and we're doing it on consultation days so that classes are over. So it's a Friday, but people, yeah.
Then one final thing about
Yeah.
the theme of the play. The theme of the play is also about the abuses that happen within a country, and then the process of justice, reconciliation, that sort of thing. And those are important themes when we look at the situation in Rwanda, in the
Yeah.
Congo,
Mm.
where millions of people are literally slaughtered, and then you
Mhm.
have survivors, and
Mhm.
a very miraculous thing happens in some of these cases where some of the perpetrators or those connected to the perpetrators are
Mhm.
actually being confronted by the survivors and the family of the survivors,
Mhm.
and in many cases, I don't want to use the term forgiveness, but sometimes the punishment isn't as it would be here in the States,
Mhm.
as we would expect it here in the
Mhm.
States.
Mhm.
So that's also a very important human
Mhm.
characteristic that we're trying to
Mhm.
convey. That it's not always about a certain kind of eye for an eye
Mhm.
justice,
Mhm.
Right.
which is very hard for
Mhm.
certainly here in America.
So yeah, and I would add maybe the gender component to here, because even Africa with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, there was an area specifically for women and the trauma. So here you have a woman and 2 men, right? And they are debating, and it's her voice kind of
Mhm.
versus them. So there's also a bit of that. That would be interesting.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Very much looking forward to it. And again, be sure to watch that Netflix special, Turning Point.
Yes.
Um,
Congratulations, Anna.
Very much, and congratulations to the show. I will definitely be coming.
You have to come.
All right. Thank you all for joining us today. The College of Arts and Humanities generally holds dozens of public events every semester. For the latest concerts, theater performances, art shows, lectures, visit calendar.fresnostate.edu, and we'll see you next week for another edition of Artful Discourse. Artful Discourse is a production of the College of Arts and Humanities at California State University, Fresno. The Dean is Dr. Honora Chapman, and the Associate Dean is Dr. Sergio Laporta. This program is written, directed, and produced by me, Benjamin Kirk, the college's communication specialist. The theme song for Artful Discourse is Maiden Voyage by Fresno State music professor Benjamin Boone from his album, Joy. More information about his music can be found at benjaminboone.com. Special thanks to KFSR and FSR Underground General Manager Julie Lindahl for making this show possible. You can learn more about the College of Arts and Humanities and find an archive of our shows at our website, cah.fresnostate.edu, or on our blog, fresnostatecah.com.